Carlos Mendoza made an opening day roster announcement of sorts here on Wednesday at Mets camp in Port St. Lucie. And as much as I think that this player was going to be on the opening day roster, regardless that this is more of a formality than anything, it's as good of a time as any to look ahead at what the Mets bullpen is actually going to look like when this team breaks camp next month, which spots are up for grabs, who's a lock and who isn't. I'm, of course, referencing Tobias Myers. Mendoza, who watched Myers throw 2 innings in a live batting practice session here at Clover Park, said that so long as Myers is healthy, he's going to be on the team. This isn't a situation where they would send him down to AAA to continue to stretch out as a starter. He's either going to be a starter or a reliever, but he's on this team. He's the other piece that came over from the Brewers in the Freddie Peralta trade earlier this year. So who else is a lock to be on the Mets in the bullpen? Of course, it's the other free agent acquisitions that the Mets brought in their staff. Devin Williams, the closer, Luke Weaver, the setup man, both coming over from the Yankees, and Luis Garcia, a veteran reliever. We also saw him throw live to face some of his teammates in 1 inning. Throws hard, keeps the ball on the ground, very experienced, very durable. Myers, to go back to him really fast, he does have experience as a starter, and this brings some insurance for the Mets in case they're hit with a barrage of injuries over the next several weeks to their rotation, which already has 6 guys in it. If you don't include Jonah Tong, Christian Scott, the depth that's going to be in AAA, Myers can be effective as a starter, but you start to think of how good he could be in that. I previously covered the Yankees, so that Michael King, that Weaver before he ended up as the 8th inning guy or the closer for the Yankees, the multi-inning fire extinguisher that you can bring in and get rid of any rally, face any part of the lineup. That's what Myers could be. And the only other lock, the way that I see it, since A.J. Minter is hurt, he's coming back in late April, early May, it's Brooks Raley, and he's the only other lefty from this group. I have everything written down, and there's really only 2 other spots. Let's assume that only 5 guys are going to be in the Mets starting rotation. They have 6: Freddie Peralta, Nolan McLean, Clay Holmes, Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, and David Peterson. I'm just opening up the door here for one of those guys potentially to get hurt before opening day. And the bullpen roster discussion gets to be even more of a tight squeeze if all 6 of those rotation guys are healthy, and then they go in with a 6-man. So when you look at those 2 open spots, at this point in camp, and it's so early, I would say the favorites are Craig Kimbrell and Brian Hudson. For Kimbrell, obviously, when he's at his best, he's a future Hall of Famer, right? There's nothing that he hasn't accomplished in this league, and he's looked good so far. He also threw live. You ask anybody in that clubhouse, they rave about the presence that he has in that room, the veteran leadership, but he's also very humble. He knows he's competing for a spot as a non-roster invitee. And then I mentioned the fact that Raley is the only lefty that's a lock on this opening day roster. You got to have at least one more southpaw in there, and Hudson came over from the White Sox in exchange for cash considerations earlier at camp. He's only 1 full year removed from when he was dominant, elite in the Brewers bullpen in Milwaukee. Had a down year last year, so if the Mets can tap into that 2024 form, I feel like it's guaranteed for him to make that team. So when you look at who else is going to have reps this spring and who could potentially make the team, let's start with the lefties because, again, I think until A.J. Minter is back, you're going to see at least one more lefty in there ideally. Nate Lavender is coming back from a long time on the sidelines because of injuries. He's yet to make his debut, but he's been around, pitched well in AAA before. Anderson Severino, another non-roster invite who has pitched well in winter ball and throws hard. I talked to one of the Mets catchers today and asked him, Hayden Singer, who I should keep an eye on from his time in AAA and where he's been. And he said that he caught Severino in winter ball and spoke very highly of him. Joe Jocks and Brandon Waddell. Waddell is actually going to start for the Mets in Game 1 of their Grapefruit League slate on Saturday, right here in Port St. Lucie against the Marlins. And then the non-lefties, Mets fans are obviously familiar with Huascar Brazaban, who's been up with the team before, and then Adbert Alzolay, who pitched at a high level with the Cubs years ago. The Mets signed him to a 2-year minor league deal, knowing that he was going to be working back from Tommy John surgery. He's at camp now, and if he can recapture his old form, he's an option there too. I mentioned Tong and Scott earlier. You wonder if maybe those prospects who are starters and at their best they will be in the rotation with the Mets down the road, maybe there's a scenario where they could be used in the bullpen. The bottom line here, and I know this is a lot of information, but the Mets have a lot of different options at their disposal this spring.